Zambezi, 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 Zambezi. The Zambezi River, also spelled Zambeze and Zambesi, is the fourth longest river in Africa, the longest east-flowing river in Africa, and the largest flowing into the Indian Ocean from Africa. The area of its basin is 1,390,000 square kilometers, 540,000 sq mi, slightly less than half of the Nile's. The 2574-kilometer-long river 1599 mi rises in Zambia and flows through eastern Angola, along the northeastern border of Namibia and the northern border of Botswana, then along the border between Zambia and Zimbabwe to Mozambique, where it crosses the country to empty into the Indian Ocean. The Zambezi's most noted feature is Victoria Falls. Other notable falls include Chavuma Falls at the border between Zambia and Angola, and Ngonye Falls near Sioma in western Zambia. There are two main sources of hydroelectric power on the river: the Kariba Dam, which provides power to Zambia and Zimbabwe, and the Cahora Bassa Dam in Mozambique, which provides power to Mozambique and South Africa. There are additionally two smaller power stations along the Zambezi River in Zambia, one at Victoria Falls and the other one near Kalene Hill in Ikelenge District. Course of the river. The sources. The river rises in a black marshy dambo in dense undulating miombo woodland 50 kilometers, 31 mi north of Mwinilunga, and 20 kilometers 12 mi south of Ikelenge in the Ikelenge district of northwestern. The area around the source is a national monument, forest reserve, and important bird area. Eastward of the source, the watershed between the Congo and Zambezi basins is a well-marked belt of high ground, running nearly east-west and falling abruptly to the north and south. This distinctly cuts off the basin of the Lualaba, the main branch of the Upper Congo, from that of the Zambezi. In the neighborhood of the source, the watershed is not as clearly defined, but the two river systems do not connect. The region drained by the Zambezi is a vast broken-edged plateau 900–1,200 m high, composed in the remote interior of metamorphic beds and fringed with the igneous rocks of the Victoria Falls. At Shupanga, on the lower Zambezi, thin strata of gray and yellow sandstones, with an occasional band of limestone, crop out on the bed of the river in the dry season, and these persist beyond Teat, where they are associated with extensive seams of coal. Coal is also found in the district just below Victoria Falls. Gold-bearing rocks occur in several places. Upper Zambezi. The river flows to the southwest into Angola for about 240 kilometers, 150 mi, then is joined by sizable tributaries such as the Luna and the Chifumage flowing from highlands to the northwest. It turns south and develops a floodplain with extreme width variation between the dry and rainy seasons. It enters dense evergreen cryptospalum dry forest, though on its western side, where it re-enters Zambia, it is nearly 400 meters. With rapids ending the Chavuma Falls, where the river flows through a rocky fissure. The river drops about 400 meters 1,300 ft in elevation from its source at 1,500 meters 4,900 ft to the Chavuma Falls at 1,100 meters 3,600 ft in a distance of about 400 kilometers 250 mi. From this point to the Victoria Falls, the level of the basin is very uniform, dropping only by another 180 meters 590 ft in a distance of around 800 kilometers 500 mi. The first of its large tributaries to enter the Zambezi is the Kabampo River in the northwestern province of Zambia. A major advantage of the Kabampo River was irrigation. The savanna through which the river has flowed gives way to a wide floodplain studded with boracious fan palms. A little farther south is the confluence with the Lungabangu River. This is the beginning of the Barotse floodplain, the most notable feature of the Upper Zambezi, but this northern part does not flood so much and includes islands of higher land in the middle. 30 kilometers below the confluence of the Lungabangu, the country becomes very flat, and the typical Barotse floodplain landscape unfolds, with the flood reaching a width of 25 km in the rainy season. For more than 200 km downstream, the annual flood cycle dominates the natural environment and human life, society and culture. 80 kilometers further down, the Luangingha, which with its tributaries drains a large area to the west, joins the Zambezi. A few kilometers higher up on the east, the main stream is joined in the rainy season by overflow of the Luampa/Luana system. A short distance downstream of the confluence with the Luangingha is Lilongwe, one of the capitals of the Lozi people who populate the Zambian region of Barotseland in Western Province. The chief of the Lozi maintains one of his two compounds at Lilongwe, the other is at Limulunga, which is on high ground and serves as the capital during the rainy season. The annual move from Lilongwe to Limulunga is a major event, celebrated as one of Zambia's best-known festivals, the Kuumboka. After Lilongwe, the river turns to south-southeast. From the east it continues to receive numerous small streams, but on the west is without major tributaries for 240 km. Before this, the Ngonye Falls and subsequent rapids interrupt navigation. South of Ngonye Falls, the river briefly borders Namibia's Caprivi Strip. The strip projects from the main body of Namibia and results from the colonial era. It was added to German Southwest Africa expressly to give Germany access to the Zambezi. Below the junction of the Kuando River and the Zambezi, the river bends almost due east. Here, the river is broad and shallow and flows slowly, but as it flows eastward towards the border of the Great Central Plateau of Africa, it reaches a chasm into which the Victoria Falls plunge. Middle Zambezi. The Victoria Falls are considered the boundary between the Upper and Middle Zambezi. Below them, the river continues to flow due east for about 200 kilometers, 120 mi, cutting through perpendicular walls of basalt 20 to 60 meters, 66 to 200 ft apart in hills 200 to 250 meters, 660 to 820 ft high. The river flows swiftly through the Batoka Gorge, the current being continually interrupted by reefs. It has been described as one of the world's most spectacular whitewater trips, a tremendous challenge for kayakers and rafters alike. Beyond the gorge are a succession of rapids which end 240 km 150 mi below Victoria Falls. Over this distance, the river drops 250 meters 820 ft. At this point, the river enters Lake Kariba, created in 1959 following the completion of the Kariba Dam. The lake is one of the largest man-made lakes in the world, and the hydroelectric power generating facilities at the dam provide electricity to much of Zambia and Zimbabwe. The Luangwa and the Kafue are the two largest left-hand tributaries of the Zambezi. The Kafue joins the main river in a quiet deep stream about 180 meters 590 ft wide. From this point the northward bend of the Zambezi is checked, and the stream continues due east. At the confluence of the Luangwa 15-37 as it enters Mozambique. The middle Zambezi ends where the river enters Lake Cahora Bassa, also spelled Cahora Bassa. Formerly the site of dangerous rapids known as Cahora Bassa, the lake was created in 1974 by the construction of the Cahora Bassa Dam. Lower Zambezi. The lower Zambezi, 650 km from Cahora Bassa to the Indian Ocean, is navigable, although the river is shallow in many places during the dry season. This shallowness arises as the river enters a broad valley and spreads out over a large area. Only at one point, the Lupata Gorge, 320 km from its mouth, is the river confined between high hills. Here it is scarcely 200 m wide. Elsewhere it is from 5 to 8 km wide, flowing gently in many streams. The riverbed is sandy, and the banks are low and reed-fringed. At places, however, and especially in the rainy season, the streams unite into one broad, fast-flowing river. About 160 km from the sea, the Zambezi receives the drainage of Lake Malawi through the Shire River. On approaching the Indian Ocean, the river splits up into a delta. Each of the four primary distributaries, Kongon, Luabo, and Timbwe, is obstructed by a sandbar. A more northerly branch, called the Chinned Mouth, has a minimum depth at low water of 2 m at the entrance and 4 m further in, and is the branch used for navigation. 100 km further north is a river called the Quelimane, after the town at its mouth. This stream, which is silting up, receives the overflow of the Zambezi in the rainy season. Delta. The delta of the Zambezi is today about half as broad as it was before the construction of the Kariba and Cahora Bassa dams controlled the seasonal variations in the flow rate of the river. Before the dams were built, seasonal flooding of the Zambezi had quite a different impact on the ecosystems of the delta from today, as it brought nutritious fresh water down to the Indian Ocean coastal wetlands. The lower Zambezi experienced a small flood surge early in the dry season as rain in the Gwembe catchment and northeastern Zimbabwe rushed through, while rain in the upper Zambezi, Kafue, and Lake Malawi basins, and Luangwa to a lesser extent, is held back by swamps and floodplains. The discharge of these systems contributed to a much larger flood in March or April, with a mean monthly maximum for April of 6,700 cubic meters, 240,000 qft per second at the delta. The record flood was more than 3 times as big, 22,500 cubic meters, 790,000 qft per second being recorded in 1958. By contrast, the discharge at the end of the dry season averaged just 500 cubic meters, 18,000 qft per second. In the 1960s and 1970s, the building of dams changed that pattern completely. Downstream, the mean monthly minimum maximum was 500 cubic meters, 18,000 qft, to 6,000 cubic meters, 210,000 qft per second. Medium-level floods, especially of the kind to which the ecology of the lower Zambezi was adapted, happen less often and have a shorter duration. As with the Ichay Dam's deleterious effects on the Kafue Flats, this has the following effects. Fish, bird, and other wildlife feeding and breeding patterns disrupted. Less grassland after flooding for grazing wildlife and cattle. Traditional farming and fishing patterns disrupted. Ecology of the Delta. The Zambezi Delta has extensive seasonally and permanently flooded grasslands, savannas, and swamp forests. Together with the floodplains of the Buzi, Pangwe, and Save rivers, the Zambezi's floodplains make up the World Wildlife Fund's Zambesian coastal flooded savanna ecoregion in Mozambique. The flooded savannas lie close to the Indian Ocean coast. Mangroves fringe the delta's shoreline. Although the dams have stemmed some of the annual flooding of the lower Zambezi and caused the area of floodplain to be greatly reduced, they have not removed flooding completely. They cannot control extreme floods. They have only made medium-level floods less frequent. When heavy rain in the lower Zambezi combines with good runoff upstream, massive floods still happen, and the wetlands are still an important habitat. However, as well as the shrinking of the wetlands, further severe damage to wildlife was caused by uncontrolled hunting of animals such as buffalo and waterbuck during the Mozambique Civil War, and now the conflict has ceased, it is likely the floodplain. And further damming has also been discussed. The only protected area of floodplain is the Maramu Game Reserve near the city of Beira. Although the region has seen a reduction in the populations of the large mammals, it is still home to some, including the reedbuck, and migrating eland. Carnivores found here include lion Panthera leo, leopard Panthera pardus, cheetah Acinonyx jubatus, spotted hyena Crocuta crocuta, and side-striped jackal Canis adustus. The floodplains are a haven for migratory waterbirds including pintails, gargani, African open-bill Anastomus lameligerus, saddle-billed stork Ephipyrhinchus senegalensis, wattled crane Bugeranus carunculatus, and great white pelican Pelicanus onocrotalis. Reptiles include Nile crocodile Crocodilus niloticus, Nile monitor lizard Varanus niloticus, and African rock python Python sibi. The endemic pungwi worm snake Leptotyphlops pungwensis, and 3 other snakes that are nearly endemic, floodplain water snake Lycodonamorphus whitei obscuraventris, dwarf wolf snake Lycophidian nanus, and swamp. There are a number of endemic butterflies. Climate. The north of the Zambezi Basin has mean annual rainfall of 1100 to 1400 mm, which declines towards the south, reaching about half that figure in the southwest. The rain falls in a four-tominous 6-month summer rainy season when the intertropical convergence zone moves over the basin from the north between October and March. Evaporation rates are high 1600 mm, 2300 mm, and much water is lost this way in swamps and floodplains, especially in the southwest of the basin. Wildlife. The river supports large populations of many animals. Hippopotamuses are abundant along most of the calm stretches of the river, as well as Nile crocodiles. Monitor lizards are found in many places. Birds are abundant, with species including heron, pelican egret, lesser flamingo, and African fish eagle present in large numbers. Riverine woodland also supports many large animals, such as buffalo, zebras, giraffes, elephants. The Zambezi also supports several hundred species of fish, some of which are endemic to the river. Important species include cichlids, which are fished heavily for food, as well as catfish, tigerfish, yellowfish, and other large species. The bull shark is sometimes known as the Zambezi shark after the river. Tributaries. Upper Zambezi, 507,200 km2, discharges 1044 m3/s at Victoria Falls, comprising Northern Highlands catchment, 222,570 km2, 850 m3/s at Lukulu. Chifumage River, Angolan Central Plateau. Luina River, Angolan Central Plateau. Kabampo River, 72,200 km2, in W Highlands of Zambia. Lungabungu River, 47,400 km2, Angolan Central Plateau. Central Plains catchment, 284,630 km2, 196 m3/s Victoria Falls, Lukulu. Luanginga River, 34,600 km2, Angolan Central Plateau. Luampa River/Luina River, Zambia, 20,500 km2, eastern side of Zambezes. Kuando/Linianti/Chobe River, 133,200 km2, Angolinus Plateau, and Caprivi Middle Zambezi cumulatively 1,050,000 km2, 2442 m3/s, measured at Cahora Bassa Gorge. Middle section by itself, 542,800 km2, discharges 1398 m3/sc, Bassa Victoria Falls. Huemd catchment, 156,600 km2, 232 m3/s Kariba Gorge Vic Falls. Hue River, 54,610 km2, NW Zimbabwe, Zimbabwe. Sangwa River, 25,000 km2, north central Zimbabwe. Saniati River, 43,500 km2, north central Zimbabwe. Kariba Gorge to sea Bassa catchment, 386,200 km2, 1166 m3/sc Bassa Kariba Gorge. Kafu River, 154,200 km2, 285 m3/s West Central Zambia and Copper Belt. Luangwa River, 151,400 km2, 547 m3/s Luangwa Rift Valley and Plateau in W of it. Panhane River, 23,897 km2, north central Zimbabwe Plateau Lower Zambezi cumulatively, 1,378,000 km2. Lower section by itself, 328,000 km2, 982 m3/s Maramusi, Bassus. Luia River, 28,000 km2, Moravia Angonia Plateau, and of Zambezes. Luinha River/Meso River, 54,144 km2, 152 and 3/S, Manica Plateau, any Zimbabwe, 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 Shire River, 154,000 came to 539 and 3/S, Lake Malawi Basin, Zambezi Delta, 12,000 came to total Zambezi River Basin, 1 million. Source: Balefuss and Dos Santos 2001. The Okavango Basin is not included in the figures because it only occasionally overflows to any extent into the Zambezi. Due to the rainfall distribution, northern tributaries contribute much more water than southern ones. For example, the northern highlands catchment of the upper Zambezi contributes 25%, Kafu 8%, Luangwa and Shire rivers 16% each, total 65% of Zambezi discharge. The large Kiwando Basin in the southwest, on the other hand, contributes only about 2 and 3/S because most is lost through evaporation in its swamp systems. The 1940s and 1950s were particularly wet decades in the basin. Since 1975, it has been drier, the average discharge being only 70% of that for the years 1930 to 1958. Geological history. Up to the late Pliocene or Pleistocene, more than 2 million years ago, the upper Zambezi River used to flow south through what is now the Makadikati Pan to the Limpopo River. The change of the river course is the result of epeirogenic movements that uplifted the surface at the present-day water divide between both rivers. Meanwhile, 1,000 kilometers (620 mi) east, a western tributary of the Shire River in the East African Rift's southern extension through Malawi eroded a deep valley on its western escarpment. At the rate of a few cm per year, this river, the Middle Zambezi, started cutting back the bed of its river towards the west, aided by grabens, rift valleys forming along its course in an east-west axis. As it did so, it captured a number of south-flowing rivers, such as the Luangwa and Kafu. Eventually, the large lake trapped at Makadikati, or a tributary of it, was captured by the Middle Zambezi, cutting back towards it, and emptied eastwards. The upper Zambezi was captured as well. The Middle Zambezi was about 300 meters (980 ft) lower than the upper Zambezi, and a high waterfall formed at the edge of the basalt plateau across which the upper river flows. This was the first Victoria Falls, somewhere down the Batoka Gorge near where Lake Kariba is now. History. Etymology. The first European to come across the Zambezi River was Vasco da Gama in January 1498, who anchored at what he called Rio dos Bons Sinai's River of Good Omens, now the Quelimane or Quaqua, a small river on the northern end of the delta, which at that time was connected by navigable channels to the Zambezi River proper. The connection silted up. In a few of the oldest maps, the entire river is denoted as such. But already by the early 1500s, a new name emerged, the Cahora River, sometimes Kwama or Zuama. Cahora was the local name given by the dwellers of the Swahili coast for an outpost located on one of the southerly islands of the delta near the Luabo Channel. Most old nautical maps denote the Luabo entry as Cahora, the entire delta as the rivers of Cahora, and the Zambezi River proper as the Cahora River. Nonetheless, already in 1552, Portuguese chronicler João de Barros notes that the same Cahora River was called Zember by the inland people of Manomatapa. The Portuguese Dominican friar João dos Santos, visiting Manomatapa in 1597, reported it as Zam, as Bantu languages frequently shifts between Z and R, and inquired into the origins of the name. He was told it was named after a people. The river Cahora is by them called Zambeze, the head whereof is so far within land that none of them know it, but by tradition of their progenitors say it comes from a lake in the midst of the continent, which yields also other great rivers, divers ways visiting the sea. They call it Zambeze, of a nation of Kafirs dwelling near that lake, which are so called. J. Santos, Ethiopia Oriental, 1609. Thus, the term Zambezi is after a people who live by a great lake to the north. The most likely candidates are the Mbizu, or Bisa people in older texts, given as Muisa, Muvisa, Abasa, Ambios, and other variations, a Bantu people who live in what is now central eastern Zambia, between the Zambezi River and Lake Bangweolo at the time. Before the London invasion, the Bisa would have likely stretched further north, possibly. The Bisa had a reputation as great cloth traders throughout the region. In a curious note, the ghost-born Portuguese trader Manuel Quitano Pereira, who traveled to the Bisa homelands in 1796, was surprised to be shown a second, separate river referred to as the Zambezi. This other Zambezi that puzzled Pereira is most likely what modern sources spell the Chambezi River in northern Zambia. The Monomotapa notion reported by Santos that the Zambezi was sourced from a great internal lake might be a reference to one of the African Great Lakes. One of the names reported by early explorers for Lake Malawi was Lake Zambur, probably a corruption of Zambezi, possibly because Lake Malawi is connected to the lower Zambezi via the Shire River. The Monomotapa story resonated with the old European notion, drawn from classical antiquity, that all the great African rivers, the Nile, the Senegal, the Congo, now the Zambezi, too, were all sourced from the same great internal lake. The Portuguese were also told that the Mozambique and Espírito Santo River, actually an estuary formed by the Umbaluzi, Matola, and Tembe rivers, was sourced from a lake, hence its outlet became known as Delagoa Bay. As a result, several old maps depict the Zambezi and the Espírito Santo rivers converging deep in the interior at the same lake. However, the Bisa-derived etymology is not without dispute. In 1845, W. D. Cooley, examining Pereira's notes, concluded the term Zambezi derives not from the Bisa people, but rather from the Bantu term Mbija/Mbesfish, and consequently it probably means merely river of fish. David Livingstone, who reached the upper Zambezi in 1853, refers to it as Zambesi, but also makes note of the local name Liambai used by the Lozi people, which he says means large river or river par excellence. Livingstone records other names for the Zambezi: Luambeji, Luambesi, Ambezi, Ajimbesi, and Zambesi applied by different peoples along its course, and asserts they all possess a similar signification and express the native idea of this magnificent stream being the main drain of the country. In Portuguese records, the Cahora River term disappeared and gave way to the term Sena River, Rio de Sena, a reference to the Swahili and later Portuguese upriver trade station at Sena. In 1752, the Zambezi Delta, under the name Rivers of Sena Rios de Sena, formed a colonial administrative district of Portuguese Mozambique. But common usage of Zambezi led eventually to a royal decree in 1858 officially renaming the district Zambezi. Exploration of the river. The Zambezi region was known to medieval geographers as the Empire of Monomotapa, and the course of the river, as well as the position of Lakes Ngami and Nyasa, were given broadly accurately in early maps. These were probably constructed from Arab information. The first European to visit the inland Zambezi River was the Portuguese degradado Antonio Fernandes in 1511 and again in 1513, with the objective of reporting on commercial conditions and activities of the interior of Central Africa. The final report of these explorations revealed the importance of the ports of the Upper Zambezi to the local trade system, in particular to East African gold trade. The first recorded exploration of the Upper Zambezi was made by David Livingstone in his exploration from Bechuanaland between 1851 and 1853. 2 or 3 years later, he descended the Zambezi to its mouth, and in the course of this journey found the Victoria Falls. During 1858-60, accompanied by John Kirk, Livingstone ascended the river by the Congon mouth as far as the falls and also traced the course of its tributary, the Shire, and reached Lake Malawi. For the next 35 years very little exploration of the river took place. Portuguese explorer Serpa Pinto examined some of the western tributaries of the river and made measurements of the Victoria Falls in 1878. In 1884, the Scottish-born Plymouth Brethren missionary Frederick Stanley Arnott travelled over the height of land between the watersheds of the Zambezi and the Congo, and identified the source of the Zambezi. He considered that the nearby high and cool Kalene Hill was a particularly suitable place for a mission. Arnott was accompanied by the Portuguese trader and army officer Antonio da Silva Porto. In 1889, the Chin Channel north of the main mouths of the river was seen. Two expeditions led by Major A. St. Hill Gibbons in 1895 to 1896 and 1898 to 1900 continued the work of exploration begun by Livingstone in the upper basin and central course of the river. Economy. The population of the Zambezi River Valley is estimated to be about 32 million. About 80% of the population of the valley is dependent on agriculture, and the upper river's flood plains provide good agricultural land. Communities by the river fish it extensively, and many people travel from far afield to fish. Some Zambian towns on roads leading to the river levy unofficial fish taxes on people taking Zambezi fish to other parts of the country. As well as fishing for food, game fishing is a significant activity on some parts of the river. Between Mongu and Livingstone, several safari lodges cater for tourists who want to fish for exotic species, and many also catch fish to sell to aquaria. The river valley is rich in mineral deposits and fossil fuels, and coal mining is important in places. The dams along its length also provide employment for many people near them, in maintaining the hydroelectric power stations and the dams themselves. Several parts of the river are also very popular tourist destinations. Victoria Falls receives over 100,000 visitors annually, with 141,929 visitors reported in 2015. Mana Pools and Lake Kariba also draw substantial tourist numbers. Transport. The river is frequently interrupted by rapids and so has never been an important long-distance transport route. David Livingstone's Zambezi expedition attempted to open up the river to navigation by paddle steamer, but was defeated by the Cahora Bassa rapids. Along some stretches, it is often more convenient to travel by canoe along the river rather than on the unimproved roads, which are often in very poor condition due to being regularly submerged in flood waters, and many small villages along the banks of the river are only accessible by boat. In the 1930s and 40s, paddle barge service operated on the stretch between the Catambora Rapids, about 50 kilometers, 31 miles upstream from Livingstone, and the rapids just upstream from Katamamililo. However, depending on the water level, boats could be paddled through lousy paddlers. A dozen or more in a boat could deal with most of them, or they could be pulled along the shore or carried around the rapids, and teams of oxen pulled barges 5 kilometers, 3.1 miles over land around the Ngonye Falls. Road, rail, and other crossings of the river, once few and far between, are proliferating. They are in order from the river's source. Kazumbo Road Bridge, Angola, bombed in the Civil War and not yet reconstructed. Chinyingi Suspension Footbridge near the town of Zambezi, a 300-meter, 980 footbridge built as a community project. Lubosi Imwiko Roman II bridge linking the towns of Mongu and Calabo, a new 10.05-meter-long concrete/steel road bridge including 38.5 km of embanked highway. It is an extension of the Lusaka-Mongu Road, meant to be a connection between Lusaka and Angola. Sioma Bridge near the Ngonye Falls, a new 260 meters long road bridge K108 MLN, opened in 2016 as part of the M10 Road Seshik-Senanga Road. Katamamililo Road Bridge, 900 meters 3,000 ft, between Namibia and Seshik in Zambia, opened 2004, completing the Trans-Caprivi Highway connecting Lusaka in Zambia with Walvis Bay on the Atlantic coast. Kazungula Bridge in August 2007, a deal was announced to replace the Kazungula Ferry, one of the largest river ferries in southern Africa, with a road bridge where the river is 430 meters 1410 ft wide. Victoria Falls Bridge Road and Rail, the first to be built, completed in April 1905, and initially intended as a link in Cecil Rhodes' scheme to build a railway from Cape Town to Cairo, 250 meters 820 ft long. Kariba Dam carries the paved Kariba/Siavanga Highway across the river. Outbreak Bridge at Kairandu Road, 382 meters 1253 ft 1939. Second Kairandu Bridge, Road 400 meters 1300 ft 2002. Cahora Bassa Dam is in a remote area and does not carry a highway across the river. Seat Suspension Bridge, 1 kilometer 1000 and Road Bridge 1970s. Zona Bridge, originally railway but converted to single-lane road 1935, the longest at 3 kilometers 1.9 mi since late 2009. It is again a railway bridge. Passenger and freight trains are again running across it, and from 2011 on the railway line over this bridge may convey several million of tons of teak coal to the Kea Bridge. Construction started in 2007 of a 2.3-kilometer, 1.4-mi road bridge to replace the Kea ferry, which, with Kazungula, is the largest ferry across the river. There are a number of small pontoon ferries across the river in Angola, Western Zambia, and Mozambique, notably between Mongo and Calabo. Above Mongo, in years following poor rainy seasons, the river can be forded at one or two places. In tourist areas, such as Victoria Falls and Kariba, short-distance tourist boats take visitors along the river. Ecology. Pollution. Sewage effluent is a major cause of water pollution around urban areas, as inadequate water treatment facilities in all the major cities of the region force them to release untreated sewage into the river. This has resulted in eutrophication of the river water. Effects of dams. The construction of two major dams regulating the flow of the river has had a major effect on wildlife and human populations in the lower Zambezi region. When the Cahora Bassa Dam was completed in 1973, its managers allowed it to fill in a single flood season, going against recommendations to fill over at least 2 years. The drastic reduction in the flow of the river led to a 40% reduction in the coverage of mangroves, greatly increased erosion of the coastal region, and a 60% reduction in the catch of prawns off the mouth due to the reduction in emplacement of silt and associate nutrients. Wetland ecosystems downstream of the dam shrank considerably. Wildlife in the delta was further threatened by uncontrolled hunting during the civil war in Mozambique. Conservation measures. The Kavango-Zambezi Transfrontier Conservation Area will cover parts of Zambia, Angola, Namibia, Zimbabwe, and Botswana, including the famous Okavango Delta in Botswana and Mosi-oa-Tunya, the Smoke That Thunders, or Victoria Falls. It is thought that the cross-border park will help with animal migration routes and assist in the preservation of wetlands which clean water, as sewage from communities is a problem. Funding was boosted for cross-border conservation along the Zambezi in 2008. The Kavango-Zambezi Transfrontier Conservation Project, which follows the Zambezi River and stretches across Angola, Botswana, Namibia, Zambia, and Zimbabwe, has received a grant of €8 million from a German non-governmental organization. Part of the funds will be used for research in areas covered by the project. However, Angola has warned that landmines from their civil war may impede the project. The river currently passes through Ngonye Falls National Park, Mosi-oa-Tunya National Park, and Lower Zambezi National Park in Zambia, and Zambezi National Park, Victoria Falls National Park, Matusadona National Park, Monopools National Park, and the Middle Zambezi Biosphere Reserve in Zimbabwe. Fish stocks management. As of 2017, the situation of overfishing in the upper Zambezi and its tributaries was considered dire, in part due to weak enforcement of the respective fisheries acts and regulations. The fish stocks of Lake Lyambezi in the eastern Caprivi were found to be totally depleted, and surveys indicated a decline in the whole Zambezi River system. Illegal fishing, i.e. by foreign nationals employed by Namibians and commercially minded individuals, exploited the resources to the detriment of local markets and the communities whose culture and economy depend on these resources. Namibian officials have consequently banned monofilament nets and imposed a closing period of about 3 months every year to allow the fish to breed. They also appointed village fish guards, and the Kayasa Channel in the Impalila Conservancy area was declared a fisheries reserve. The Namibian ministry also promotes aquaculture and plans to distribute thousands of fingerlings to registered small-scale fish farmers of the region. U.S. outbreak. On 14 September 2007, epizootic ulcerative syndrome (EUS) killed hundreds of sore-covered fish in the river. Zambia Agriculture Minister Ben Kapita asked experts to investigate the outbreak to probe the cause to find out if the disease can be transmitted to humans. Major towns. Along much of the river's length, the population is sparse, but important towns and cities along its course include the following: Katamamililo, Namibia; Mongu, Lukulu; Livingstone and Seshik, Zambia; Victoria Falls and Kariba, Zimbabwe; Songo and Teet, Mozambique;